Okay, well, I've got my vegetable crown on, and now I have a lot of explaining to do. Welcome back, everybody, and happy September, the month we traditionally knuckle down and get back to it. This is the virtual events group. We started this club during the pandemic as a stopgap to upskill and to learn more about what we could do with events during the pandemic. Well, that kind of stuck around for a bit, and now we have a full-blown organization whose job it is to make better events wherever they happen. And it could be the Metaverse, Mars, or the Marriott. I don't really care. But thanks for being here with us at the Virtual Events Group. And if you haven't been here before, we hope you'll join us again. I'm going to do a little bit of introduction to our guest, David Adler, who is kind enough to call in from London, and you can ask him about his week because it's pretty fantastic. But before I go to David, I just want to bring you up to date on what we're doing here. If I can make my PowerPoint move. So we have doing a lot in the real world these days. I want to let you know what we're doing so that you can join us wherever you are. The first is in about 2 weeks, and it's at the Toy Fair. And the toy industry, like any industry, is going through their changes and their retrofitting. This is the first time they'll have had a live show in 3 years. They're pretty excited, pretty sold out. And we are bringing in a taste of tech with looking at, in particular, how AI is incorporated into the toy creation workflow and how the creator economy, influencers, and how the toy industry can start to take advantage of the wonderful things going on in the creator economy. And I'm going to take my vegetable hat off for the rest of it because I just realized how silly I look. After September, in October, mid-October, we'll be at IMAX, and I think a lot of you will be there as well. And this will be our second year there. I hope you will join us there, because we're going to be putting on a podcast series where we just want to talk to you. We want to know what you've been thinking about events, what you're thinking going forward, how you've pivoted any times over, and we will have a booth set up. But luckily for us, it's going to be an easy booth to find because it is right next door to Dahlia Plus Agency, Dahlia Algazar, who's probably not a stranger to many of you. She's here now. And I just want Dahlia to hop on. And Dahlia, I'll be the last to know. Tell us what you're doing.
What are we doing? What are we not doing at IMAX? We actually have a booth, but really what it is it's a meeting point. So first and foremost, we try really hard for first timers or those that want to navigate and find new friends, new solutions, new ideas, or to steal ideas. We are going to be that meetup point. We have awesome neighbors, and that would be Robin and her team. And within our capacity on the show floor, it's going to be the tech concierge for IMAX. So this is where you can ask all your questions or need validation when it comes to your strategy. You want new ideas for designing like interactive content, marketing, any tech questions that you might have as well. So that's in a nutshell what we're doing at IMAX. But more than anything, it's for us to continue us being net weavers and helping you find either like-minded people you want to debate with, which David Adler and myself, we do all the time, or solutions that will just make you more awesome than you are right now.
Yeah, and I think brainstorm. So you can hit us up 2 for 1. Stop in, get your fix of ideas and brainstorming, and then come talk about them on the podcast. And we're pretty excited, and we'll keep you informed. But do that in the chat window. You'll find the link to how you can register and set aside some time with us. And for those of you who haven't been to IMAX, it's a great show about destinations, travel, and hospitality. So it's a blast. Last, let me just let somebody in here. Next on our list, I want you to mark your calendars because we're back in October with our virtual events group meeting, and we're going to feature Wowzitude, which during the pandemic did a fabulous job of bringing people on tours of museums, tours of places, tours of destinations, and has translated that and kept it going post-pandemic into a wonderful business to help event planners and other people shortcut their searches. And Canvas is a new company, relatively new, that has taken Zoom and put a face on top of it that is truly experiential and makes you feel that experience comes first and Zoom windows second, and you'll get to like delve behind the scenes at how they work. So that's on October 19th. And then I can go back to our normal programming and really want your thoughts and really want you to ask David questions. So first of all, let's start with David was kind enough to come in from London, but sadly for him, he was in France before that, stomping on grapes and tasting wine with Michelin things, and he can tell you all about that. And yet he still managed to speak less than an hour ago for Stova and BizBash on future trends and events. David is no stranger to trends and events. He has kind of created them, seen them coming. I call him, and I don't think it's an exaggeration, the father of modern day events. And he has also put some of this wisdom into a book that you should all go get called Harnessing Serendipity. And it's about other people from other industries and other places who have taken this same idea. And I'm going to show you one more slide because I had to go look this up to make sure I was correct. That is the definition of serendipity. So serendipity, it's supposed to just happen, right? Something happens by happenstance, by circumstance. So here's David who comes in and says, yes, there's serendipity and it's beautiful, but yes, you can harness it and you can sort of give it a nudge and force it. And when that happens, it's truly magic. So I think that's what we want to talk about. And my only other preamble is grumbly one, because as I look at the events business, and we were talking about this before the show, I said, gee, I always felt like I had to listen carefully and pay the price so my sponsors would then entertain me. Yet all the research we're seeing and hearing coming out of everywhere saying this new generation of attendees do not want to sit and listen to your 45-minute keynote. They do not want to sit in session after session. They want to feel alive. They want to feel energized. They want to learn by doing. And how do you make that fit behaviorally with sponsors who want to, in fact, get out in front of your attendees and espouse? So that's where I think David can really help us out today, because he's been thinking about this for his whole life, at least the part I know of it. So David, why don't you start by just giving us the snapshot of how your journey went, where it started.
So let me first start by saying hello to my co-author Andrew Frothingham, who's on the line, and also one of my oldest friend Gail Mutnick, who is also on the line, who knew me in college, and she'll attest to the fact that nothing has changed at all. And so I think that's interesting. And the one other point I wanted to bring up before we started is you talk about Toy Fair. So in 1990, one of the sort of side gigs that I had was in the PR business, and I was helping on Toy Fair, and we represented G.I. Joe. But the night before Toy Fair, the Barbie Liberation Organization changed all the voice boxes in the G.I. Joes to Barbie and Barbie to G.I. Joe. And it was my first crisis communications job. It was right before Toy Fair. And with Barbie being so popular now, it was like, oh my God, I was fighting the Barbie Liberation Organization for 30 years. And so I thought that was pretty funny.
That is pretty funny. And clearly you did a better job than Delta this week.
But I'm glad Barbie Liberation Army is making its progress. And I think its time is here. but it was an event that they had to do it around because that was where the spotlight is. And, our events are about spotlights, and spotlights are how we get people to want to be involved in something bigger than themselves. And I think all of us are part of that when we're in the event industry. I also am going to start off by saying that I don't think that we're in the event industry anymore, just traditionally anymore. We're kind of in the goosebump business. We're in the business of getting people engaged so that they don't want to just listen politely. They want to listen excitedly about something and then get involved with whatever it is. And I think that's the big challenge. And I think that that's the thing that people need to, we need to get better at doing. And I think all of us have had a lot of experiences with what doesn't work and what does work. And in fact, I was saying at this earlier thing I just did today that I put in chat OpenAI question that was, what's the event industry going to be in 25 years from now? And they actually branded a bunch of different things. And one of the top things that they came out with was, it was called emo events, is how do you plan the emotion of an event? How do you create Maya Angelou and put it into an AI and have her help you plan your event so you're going to get people feeling things? And it was really interesting and at the last meeting I was at, some of the technologists said, yes, they're going to have that through the analysis. You're going to know what happens. You're going to know what works and what doesn't work. And it's going to really help in the way we analyze our events.
Yes.
And also
yes.
the new technology.
Sentiment analysis for sure. It's
already
there.
happening. Yeah.
It is. It misses quite often. I always say they think I'm paying attention to the speaker. I'm looking at the cute guy next to me. That they're measuring some crazy reaction. But to your point, and to put an exclamation point on that, I don't think it's just events in the traditional sense. I think every meeting with your company every week, every meeting with your salespeople, every encounter that you have now is meant to fuel emotion and loyalty and march in step. I know I'll call out a few people, Sherry Huss on the call, who came into Freeman as their community head of community and has done an unbelievable job building up a community both internally and externally. So it's the meeting, but it's like every meeting you've ever been to. It's your church service.
The event doesn't start at the event. The event starts when you come up with the idea for the event to help people brainstorm on what the event's going to be. And the invitation. It's all a continuum. And also, we don't really want to plan events anymore. We want to create platforms. We want to be able to create something that's not one-offs. And I think that's what people are craving. They're craving intimacy. We were having a talk earlier. I don't know if it was Delia, we're talking about that events are getting too big, and that how do you scale intimacy is another one of our challenges. How do you scale intimacy? And you do it by breaking up into smaller events, and maybe some events are getting too big and they need to rethink everything. And Delia is very articulate on that.
Yeah.
You want to jump in?
Yeah,
everybody just jump in. This is not
David, when you say you were in the goosebumps business, and then I see, especially after the Corona coaster, where event organizers and event marketers say we're back, and they want the same numbers as pre-Corona coaster. And I was just at a marketing event last week, Inbound, here in Boston, and it's awesome but it went from 500 people to now like 15,000, give or take 5,000, because they said 20, but right. Give or take, it doesn't matter. But like in my head, I always seek those that are either first timers or those that are lost and they're looking at their phone or they're sitting alone. And it made me wonder, when do you call a shot, or when do you say an event is too big to foster goosebumps, to create a movement of energy between you and other attendee members, or you and the content, or those and the speakers, for example? When do you say, even like a toy fair, when do you say that an event is too big, and what do you do to design those serendipitous moments and the emotion around that, even within an event, or tangents from it as well. And those are all golden opportunities. I'm not creating problems here. I'm creating like new platforms, as you call it.
Jason Alexander, who is in our book, Collaboration Artists, Connectors and Conveners, talks about how he collaborates with the audience in rehearsals by watching their body language. Mm-hmm. And I think all event organizers know in 2 seconds from the body language how it's going, because you have that feeling, and event organizers have the ability to sort of move things and change things. A play becomes solid at some point, and you don't get to do that. But as event organizers, we're in a live situation where we have to react to the body language of the people. And if you see people looking around and leaving, I mean, as a speaker, the worst problem in virtual events, which we have to solve, is you don't see the reaction. So you have no idea as a speaker, right, what the hell is going on. And you completely have no authenticity with your audience. And you could just be sitting there in a room and nobody's paying attention at all. And that's what you think. I don't know if other people have had that same experience. So, the collaboration on body language is more important than almost anything. And then all the neuroscience of it, and we're jumping around here a little bit, but we had Andrea Sullivan, who is a neuroscience expert, talking about emotional contagion, and how when you go into a room, there is a magnetic force that happens that we have to be aware of, and that people do things. We had another group called the College of Extraordinary Experiences, who talks about role-playing, live-action role-playing, and he talks about how we're all mirroring each other all the time. So we need to understand all of that. So I think that what we do in the event world is much more complex than what people think we do, and the behaviors are changing. And now we have the analytical tools to see whether we're right or wrong, and it doesn't have to be a crapshoot as much, especially with AI coming in.
Yeah.
I'm jumping around a lot. Do you want to just
So those people are in the book, the Extraordinary Experiences people. That's all chapters in the book. And your co-author, is he out here somewhere?
Andrew is here.
Andrew, were you the one that went on the treasure hunt to find these people?
Yes.
David basically was the one who was able to find a lot of people. But I'd like to add to what he was saying. Relative to your particular group, we also had people in the book talk about things that, frankly, I had not thought of, which was that not just breaking the third wall, but breaking the fourth and fifth wall, so that you start breaking the wall between audience members and virtual audience members, and then breaking down walls between virtual audience members. And there's some brilliant stuff that people are thinking about. Somebody brought up the idea of, if you wanted to involve virtual people more heavily, have people who are actually at an event carry around an iPad so that they would be connected to somebody in the virtual audience and they would be experiencing it that way. So cool. Everything David's talking about, people are figuring out how to do with virtual audiences in really exciting ways, and how to collaborate right across that barrier.
Yeah, and it will make it a more inclusive experience as well, because
it's absolutely the key to, for so many people in so many events, to making things more inclusive, because you can include so many more people. The cost of entry in terms of time and energy and getting dressed up, or just financial costs, is lowered enormously when you get to a virtual event. So it's completely transformative.
As the technology gets better, so that you can actually see the chemical reactions between people.
Yeah.
And I think that you're going to see this evolve. We're just sort of at the beginning of it, where virtual will have its place. Right now, we're in this honeymoon for in real life. But I think that as it becomes not accessible to everybody all the time, that you're going to have options.
Yeah. And you can't be. It's the FOMO of all FOMOs to be everywhere all the time. So you'll have choices like the one you've all made today. But David, let's give people a timeline. So anyhow, you're this guy doing stuff in communications and PR. You're in Washington, you're in policy, you're doing all sorts of things. And what gave you the inspiration to start BizBash?
Well, let me go back a little bit. This is my second major startup. In fact, in 2025, it will be the 50th anniversary of me starting a magazine in Washington called Washington Dossier. And that was a society magazine for Washington, D.C. And I was 21 years old, and Gail knows, and Gail was there. And I hired my mom to be the editor. I borrowed $6,000 from my father. And it was right after the 60s kind of ended in 1975. And it was the post-Watergate era. And all of a sudden, Washington was where a lot of the action was. And there was instead of, you didn't have Instagram, you didn't have anything, you had the Washington Post style section. And we decided to create a society magazine where we would go and we would cover events of not just events that were pedestrian, but like the Reagan inauguration and the Jimmy Carter this and Washington worked on that. That's how people went to work. They would go to the embassies at night. They'd go to the Iranian embassy at night, and they would have all the champagne and caviar. And those experiences were unbelievable, because when you go to an event at an embassy, you really are dipping into a culture. So we would cover events, and I got to talk to all of the politicians. It turns out that the number one skill set of politicians is event organizing, because that's how they campaign, that's how they connect with people, and they talk events all the time. So instead of talking about policy, we would talk about, hey, what was your RSVP rate, and like, what are we going to do for this kind of event, and what debate should that be? And it became really of interest, and everyone then wanted to look at the scorecard. They wanted to see the pictures of people that attended the events. It's old-fashioned journalism that's done in all these societies where people want to see other people. And ambassadors used it as a way to show their country what they were doing, and that they were at the British embassy, and they were at mixing with the OAS or different things. And so I really learned a lot about the importance of events then. So I did that for about 12 years, sold the magazine, had a non-compete, had to move to New York City, and ended up getting a job as head of corporate communications for a guy by the name of Robert Maxwell, who is a British media lord who happens to have a famous daughter. Some Kate.
Any guesses from the audience? Type it in the chat.
Named Ghislaine Maxwell. And Ghislaine Maxwell just moved to Washington, to New York, and she was trying to figure out what to do, and so she basically was. Can I say something funny? Somebody's ringing my doorbell in my suite here.
I can't wait to find out. It is true harnessing.
Can you hold on 1 second while I open this? Is like total Zoom. Hold on.
Yeah, no, it's true harnessing serendipity, right? So, Andrew, I'll put you on the spot while he's getting his doorbell. So, I happen to live in New York City, not at the moment, but in a building with Francisco Nunez, who is a chapter in the book. And I saw Francisco this morning. He couldn't be on the show because he's rehearsing for Dead Man Walking at Lincoln Center. But he started the Young People's Chorus of New York. My kids were all members. And so why did you choose him for harnessing serendipity?
Well, there's a musical theme that travels through a lot of the book, because music is one way of bringing people together. And so we've got, Branford Marsalis, we've got all sorts of people who are particularly capable of solving the problem of getting people to make music together, but then also all sorts of people who are then able to use the magic of music and making music together to teach other things, to teach people how to cooperate, how to listen, how to do things. And so, here you had Francisco, who is just an amazing person to talk to, and has figured out how to, he stepped into a city that was not overall a choral city and figured out how to make New York City sing in a way that resonated with him and with his childhood and just vastly enriched the city. And so he's just a gold mine
Yeah, he was fantastic.
of
Yeah.
insight.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
he is
great.
wonderful. And you're right, in learning music, I know my kids learn so many other skills from him that stuck with them. We're actually, our kids are way grown, and my husband still makes posters for all his events and his graduations. Yeah, he attracts multitudes. But I think that's many of the people that you talk about in the book attract followings by harnessing serendipity.
Well, it just helps simulate everything. I use live music in all of my events. At least I did at BizBash. I went to C2 Montreal and I learned that they did it, and I started using it just as walk-on music. And one event, Florida, we had 5 baby grands in the audience that basically, once you hear it, there's something that happens in your brain that makes you feel like you want to connect with other people as well. So I always feel I have my Jimmy Fallon band with me whenever I do an event, and you may think it's not used all the time, but those accents, even at the most boring, I don't know if Gail would do it at the most boring, not boring, but a scientific convention where you're supposed to be so smart and academic. I think that there's a lot of stuff merging together, all the consumer stuff and the B2B stuff and the academic stuff. It's all one thing now.
Yeah, and it's behavioral science, right?
Look at the way that the people from Playing for Change have figured out how to make people make music together around the world and then leverage that into an even bigger experience. I mean, that's just such an incredible testament to the power of technology to unite people and to reach into a basic human need and drive.
When we had Wynton Marsalis interviewed, he talks about it, how after a group finishes their improv session, they all hug each other, which I thought was a beautiful sense of what serendipity and emotion and connectivity is all about, because they created something from nothing. And at events, we're doing the same thing. That event's never going to be anything different. It's going to be a unique experience that'll never be anything like it ever again. And so what we do is very magical. And you have no idea when you talk about the serendipity, the ideas and the conversations that are happening that could change the world, especially in an academic conference, it's those conversations that get to the point. In our book, we said the most powerful word is the word let's, because when people get together, they say, let's go to lunch, let's go to dinner, let's hook up, let's start a revolution. And that's the activation word that we're looking for. And that's what we're trying to stimulate to create and harness what we call the serendipity. So that's sorry, no, they're doing a turn down service in the room, so that's why.
And I expected some band to walk in and start playing.
No, but I'm at this incredibly beautiful hotel called the Ritz in London, and I thought, oh my God, let me try this. It is so beautiful. It is not at all what you expect from a luxury point of view, like from modern updated, but it's the service. It's sort of like what the basics of hospitality are about. And it reminded me, it's not all about the glitz. It's about the people and the training of the people and how they connect with people and how it's, the bathrooms are not updated. It's like, it's going through a whole thing, but it's still old world charm.
So that is a great segue. So we left you when you went to open the door. We were talking about the dossier and how that had I guess its own.
So basically, what happened after that? I left that company. I did some PR work. And my friend ran a magazine company called Primedia, and Primedia owned 350 magazines, including 17 in New York and Soap Opera Digest and Chicago Magazine, and then we also owned Hog Farmer and Beef Magazine and all these sort of enthusiast magazines. So in my office, I had to have a newsstand just to know what the hell we were doing. And we were using events to market the company overall. And so we took the event budgets and put it at the corporate level so that we can make sure that whenever one of our brands did something, that they invited the street so that our stock would go up. So when we did a 17 magazine event, I would be involved in it at the corporate level so that we can bring the local analysts in from Wall Street. And we did that. We did the 50th anniversary of 17, the 100th anniversary of the Daily Racing Forum, the 35th anniversary of New York Magazine. I mean, I had like anniversaries every week, and we had different constituencies doing it. And I would hire this guy named Robert Isabel. I don't know if you've heard of him. And he's this incredible mega event designer. And every event would be, a couple $1 million, maybe 3, 4. And I had to negotiate based on palm trees. Like one less palm tree was like $100,000 less. And so I would have to like keep them in line by cutting, like, can we just do 4 palm trees instead of 7, and I'd save $300,000. And I realized that there was no marketplace for the event industry. You called your friends. You didn't really have any place because the event organizers basically hid their Rolodexes. So when I decided to start BizBash, it was all about deconstructing an event and disintermediating the event organizer so that we would go cover events and we'd say who did what at the events, because there was no secret. You go, oh, we know what the band is. That's the band. And, this is the lighting guy. And this was the registration, thing. And so we started listing the vendors and a little synopsis of what the event was, who planned the event. And we started that in as a online only in 2000. And then it progressed into magazines, trade shows. And then we started in New York City for about 5 years, and then ended up expanding to Toronto and to Miami, Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Boston for a little while, because Boston weren't big spenders on events. And I did trade shows. I'm up to, I think at the end of this, I've done, and sometimes we were doing 6 trade shows in one city and learned the local market of it. And BizBash became a way to peek over the fence to see what other people were doing to raise the level of the industry. And, what happened was it's where people went, and it was a fun brand. It was a love brand because we would showcase all these cool things. And when you opened it, and if you were an event organizer, you would get goosebumps looking at it because it was your world that we were covering. It's no different than when I was in France last week. The people that are wine nerds, like, they go crazy over like the different tastes of the wines. And so we found a tribe. And the tribe really loved doing what they're doing. People love this industry. And, I was noticing that the more we write about it, the more people want to get involved. So our online service got really extremely high. And our print magazine did really well. They were really thick. And we started a magazine from nothing in New York City, which I'm very proud of. And then about, after the iPhone came in, it changed things a lot, because all of a sudden everybody was an event or was a media company. And so it sort of democratized it a little bit, and we had to sort of go even better coverage. So we started doing the lists, like the top 1,000 people in events, or the top 50 that, or the top 75 this. And it's a strategy that made it more even personalized. And so that we did that for many, many years. And then the iPhone also made it so event budgets got much bigger, because all of a sudden you're not talking to the 30 people in the room or the 100 people or the 200. You're talking to every one of them had 17 friends. And so then all of a sudden event marketing became really important to people, and it changed the way you look at events. Experiences were no longer just in the group of people. And so you now are planning events. That's why the World Activation got involved, because it's how, Dahlia tells Kate and Kate tells Marion, and you sort of like do that. You also, if it sucks, it also it does the same thing on the reverse. So we started covering and showcasing that in our magazines, online. We started award programs. We started more trade shows. We upped our trade show game. And then the recession hit in 2007. And it was like one big shoot down, and we had to, and it took about 7 years to get back up. And so it was, we went through everything. I call it outward bound for business in those days, because we went through the 2000 recession, we went through the 2007 economic downturn, we went through 9/11, we went through every single possible thing you can go through. And events, even in 9/11, were more important than ever, because even though they weren't public, people were gathering. And so I just felt that there was this thing that events are so important in people's lives, and that we need to support them, and we need to make celebrities out of the event organizers. Because if the event organizers become celebrity, that's kind of like what happened with the chefs. The chefs were in the back room, slinging hash, and now they're superstars. And we think event organizers should be superstars, because if you could pull off climate conferences and major conferences, that's a major, major deal. And so then up until December 3rd, 2019, I actually sold BizBash a month and a half before the pandemic, and sold it to Tarsus. And I'm still the chairman and the founder of it, and I'm still totally passionate about it. They've changed things. It's now been sold again, and it's owned by Informa. So we're now part of the world's largest trade show in a conference company. And I think they're taking a lot of our thinking and using it on a global basis. So that's kind of my.
And I know just before this, you were on this call with BizBash and Stova pointing out the coming trends. And the one I really want to ask you about, so it's sort of when you're running a business, you have to know what your domain is, and then how far out from it you go. Are you going out to I won't use the M word, the immersive world, the world of spatial computing? And
I think spatial computing is going to be fantastic, but I think that the event industry is going to be the gateway to the metaverse, because we're going to need to have guides. You're not going to sit home on your headset, and you're going to be bored out of your mind in 15 minutes, but you're going to be going into the booth that some tractor company builds, and you're going to go onto a digital double, and you're going to be able to drive the tractor. And if you're in the farming business, you really want to care about that. And in every industry, they're going to create their own mini metaverses that the event industry is going to be the guide to get you in there. And then it'll take off in a different direction. Then who knows what'll happen? Because digital and face-to-face will all merge as the emotions are connected with each one.
I think I agree with you on that. I wonder though, and I wonder how event organizers and event designers are going to be able to harness content creation to continue to get people to the events and the conferences and so forth, because it is a very hard lift to create goosebumps with not only the right content, but the delivery of the content. And so like, if you go ahead.
I think that we're the guides. I think that the brands are going to spend the money on it. MTV was started by Bob Pittman in whenever the cable started. They didn't spend one nickel on their own content, but it was the groups and the bands and the things like that spent the money. TikTok spends not one nickel on content. I think we as event organizers are community builders, and that we're going to be the ones that'll help the brands create the front doors to their own metaverses. But we're not going to be the ones creating that content. We can't afford to do it. We don't have the skill set to do it. But I think that you're going to go to a trade show in the future is going to be doors to every single one of these crazy things, and it'll get you immersive inside of the experience that's being created by the brands. And they'll spend. Do you agree with that? I don't know if I'm right. I'm just sort of making this up as I go along.
No, well, whatever you're making up makes sense, and it sounds really awesome. But one thing that I would question is there are certain industries that are going to have a lot of trouble with it, and even like healthcare and medical. And the reason I say that is because those that deliver that type of content tend to be very dry, or tend to be very, they need, I always tell my clients, everybody that you have, especially your speakers and your, stakeholders, your sponsors, your attendees, have to be part of a production of Hamilton. They are all part of Hamilton. Give them the stage, even those that are attendees, first timers, 10 timers, whatever it is. Like you said, I agree with you on this in the sense of celebrate and make the event organizer the king, the queen. I actually think it's the attendees that can become the kings and queens, and they need to co-create the content with those that are actually on stage, whether it's a doctor, first time, 10 time, etc. kind of thing. But that is the opportunity for serendipity, for the goosebumps, for the exchange, for the secret doors to other meetups within the experience or within the events. I worry about events that keep saying, we're just going to stick to the same old floor, show floor. Well,
see, but if we as event organizers can create the communities, the brands will do the job of creating the content, I believe. And I think that.
Can I jump in for a second? Dave, I think that one of the great things that Dahlia is pointing to right now is, she brought up the idea of medical and pharma, where we're all aware of certain kinds of disconnects in terms of the fact that, just take diabetes as an example. Patients don't do what doctors tell them because doctors don't talk to patients in the language that patients use about themselves. And so all of a sudden, we, people who are event planners, that sort of thing, have the exact skill set that's needed to connect patients to patient, where you can have credibility and where you can get to people with certain kinds of conditions in a language and in a way that will actually motivate them. So I really think that event planners and other people in that kind of field are perfectly positioned. The problem there isn't so much lack of content, it's translation of content and contextualization of content into a way that people actually understand and moves them.
We had this agency, there's this great, I forgot the name of the agency, it's a big innovation agency on the West Coast, who was we're pitching a healthcare client. And the way they pitched them is they sent them this awful invitation that was typed 100, everything was maxed. They invited them to their office for lunch. They made them wait an hour. They put them for lunch in the worst place ever. They just used exactly what happens to the patient in a hospital to pitch the business. And they got the business because all of a sudden the client or the healthcare organization realized that that's what they're doing. And I think that it was a very interesting thing to me that maybe there is things that'll change. And I look at TikTok to see the innovation in content creation that's unbelievable, that I think is a little bit what Dahlia is talking about, a patient to patient. But these creators are going to come out of nowhere. I've learned more about my knee replacement from TikTok than anything else.
Yeah, no, and I think to just summarize some of your points, I think event creators almost need to be wall breakers, to go through those walls, to take the brands and show them, retrain them how they can make an impact by talking to their attendees and involving their attendees. And it is a big switch. And I'm going to ask you one more question that I see happening. I see some of the best events now coming from the brands themselves saying, the hell with you. We don't need to go to your events. Salesforce, thank you. We'll just do Dreamforce. Apple, we'll just do Wonderlust. Zoomtopia. Meta, I think, is this week. So in particular, the tech industry has latched onto this. Let's just own our own if we're going to spend a ton of money and we own the show. Just your thoughts on that.
I think that's absolutely happening. But with the reason the trade shows are good, it gets the new clients. That you don't get who are going to their own events. So there's a purpose for both. I mean, the number one thing is to hang on to your clients and do the best thing you can do. I mean, I love those internal events, and they're hiring tons of event organizers, and
Yeah,
it's just, they have bigger budgets, and
they do.
they're not sort of, it's a different sort of mindset. And I think that's fantastic.
But you're right, worth it to look at just for production values. I mean, they're as close to Broadway as one gets in as an event. I
Yeah,
think.
and they're hiring our folks to do it. Although it's so funny, the first year when they hire the young labor, the first thing they do, in my experience with tech companies, is they think it's all about the flowers for some reason. And they go crazy the first year with floral. And then the next year they never even, they minimize it, because they realize it's not about the wedding that they went to, that they think they know how to do events, because they're hiring a lot of times not necessarily the professional the first year, because that's who they know.
Yeah.
My friend's wedding was blah, 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 and she knows how to do that. And they don't realize how important it is.
But I know to go back to flowers. I know you're really big on detail, that everything from the minute you walk in and see a room, feel the audience, see the way the chairs are set up, makes a difference. Learn skill, trainable, like where does that sit on the continuum of event skill?
Which the
Like just the paying attention.
Neuroscience. Andrew, what does she call it? Neurophysiology.
Yeah.
Andrea Sullivan, is that her
Andrea
name?
Sullivan. And every aspect of where you sit, how the audience goes, the idea of the old-fashioned way of people sitting and watching a stage, the the round tables that we've had over the last 25 years, as opposed to the people just standing, and all of that is all based on our neuro, whatever the right word is. That is all about the science of how we connect and how we learn and everything else. And
yeah, so I'll go for neurophysiology, but yeah,
neurophysiology.
You're right. You're seeing it everywhere. I mean, look at David Byrne's show on Broadway. Look at where the audience, pays good money to stand through the whole thing now and be a part of it. Look at sports where you can watch the NFL, or you can have the characters and play with them. I think you're going to see so many clever permutations. We have just a few seconds. Audience, I know you're all thinking things because you're all typing to me. Kate, did you want to say something?
I do. Hi, everybody. Thank you. David, Andrew, Gail, thank you. This is lovely. Quick thing. Gigi and Robin and Dahlia all know this, but my fundamental mission is transform education so that people get to do in education what they do in the real world. The structure I call 6 degrees of innovation, and the 6th degree is cultivate serendipity. It's that important. And I will tell you what I've learned over all my life of doing that. In every class I ever taught at Fordham Grad School of Business, it was an event. And I kept it at 12 people at a table, because in my old age, looking back over my whole life, the way that you can cultivate serendipity is somebody has to say something vulnerable and self-revealing in the room. One person can open the whole thing up, but you got to hold the space for that. In an event where people just talk at you all the time, there's no place for all those people in the audience to say something revealing to anybody. So I will put my book in the chat, and
I totally agree with you. I mean, I one of the things I do all the time now, I've done them I do maybe 20 a year, 20, 30 a year, the Jeffersonian dinner parties. And a Jeffersonian dinner party is basically, I control the conversation. And the questions that I ask are, how do you democratize the room to under 20 years old? And the 2 questions that have worked the best for me, of course, I'm not a major brainiac, so I don't want to do these philosophical questions. So I ask, what was your first job and what did you learn from it? And as people are mirroring themselves around the room, they open up about that first job, what they learned, and everyone else is learning about it as well. And every time I do it, they're crying, they're bringing up memories, there's intimacy and vulnerability. The other question I ask is, who is their favorite teacher and why? And that also comes down to Mrs. Heckman in 3rd grade thought of me as a human being and talked to me for the first time as a real person. And then everybody then goes and brings up the memories of their childhood. And every time I've done it, it's been like, wow, did I crack the code on something? And it is kind of what you're saying.
Yep.
Thanks, Kate. No, it is. I'm much more of a grumbler. I want to know who's going to pay for this, and then and then I want to know when I was brought up in a world where we left personal and emotions at home. You did not show them to anybody, no matter what they said to you. And I came out of publishing also, so it was brutal. And I am so excited that this world is like open again for reinvestigation. And I do think it stemmed from a pandemic that made us rethink a lot of things, that broke down walls between who we were at home and who we were at work, because that's all gone. And so I'm really excited about that. Sherry, are you still on the call? Sherry Huss?
Oh yeah, I'm here listening. Great conversation. I mean,
Were you here in the beginning when I called you out and said,
I was in the car. Sorry, I had a couple things today, but I just got, as Robin said, I've been working with Freeman, and I had the opportunity, thanks to Bob Priestek, to reimagine their leadership conference, and I've turned it into summer camp. And this year we took them to Boise instead of to a resort. Why Boise? Why are we going there? What is this? They loved it. And now they want an urban environment because I can create new experiences. And it's sort of like, and again, I don't come from the trade show world, but at one point I came from developer conferences and Maker Faire, but at one point we were acquired by Comdex. And so I got to watch the trade show thinking. And so some things I stayed away from on purpose, but I have to say my sort of acid test now is if it will work, it worked in kindergarten. And
Yep.
So things that, and again, it gets people to open up. They are vulnerable.
Did we lose her?
New conversation, because there's so much energy in this call. I wish there were more people on. This is the heart and soul of what we do. And so thank you, David and Robin and Dahlia and team. Really great. Love it.
So I put together I went to Chat GPT and I put together, and Andrew helped me work on this, a list of the top icebreakers. And we started with just give us a general icebreaker. Came up with a couple hundred really branded things that people do. And then we asked it, what do nursery school teachers do?
Yeah.
It was exactly the same thing.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, last year we did actually Murray Hillary is the guy's name.
Sherry has the worst
But
reception.
basically we took people out before. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but again, it's even like nap time, like when you were in kindergarten, where everyone had to just take a break and meditate, or like, Anyway, sorry if you can't hear me.
No, it just dropped in and out. You were talking about Murray Hillary, and then you dropped down.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. Where people put on headsets, just all together, and just really got to just be for a little bit, and then how that experience, moved them. So anyway, kudos, great conversation, love it. We need more of this.
We do need more of them.
Yeah.
And you can get lost. And so think any other last thoughts from anybody out there? And Andrew, thank you so much for your insights. I'm so glad you were an active part of this.
Well, David is being too modest. He should have also mentioned that he's taken a lot of the insights he's gained from the event world, and as a way of giving back, has been involved in the diplomatic world and trying to help them gain new insights as to how to improve the world.
Yep. Oh yeah, that's interesting.
No, it's so interesting and so needed. It's fun. I just came back. I was at the UN.
One thing, you know what? In that point, the one thing that I learned, not to get political, but I worked for Hillary at the State Department, and her sense of what soft power is about is what we're about. We're about soft power. One of the things we did at the State Department was I started something called the American Chef Corps, where we took 100 chefs and turned them into ambassadors. And they go around the world, they talk about American cuisine. They cook whenever there's an event at the State Department to help sort of up the game of the State Department. And these are the best chefs in the world. And we basically gave them a State Department chef outfit and had a big ceremony, and they all got involved. And the idea is to, I tried to create these internal diplomatic corps for the hospitality industry. We did one for education where we turned the 8th floor of the State Department into a museum and created the content and gave it to teachers to create curriculum. And so the idea is that if you want to be involved in helping the country, you can participate in a way that that makes you feel good about what we're doing in this U.S.
Okay, so give us hope. So if you try these ideas and they fail, are you going to live? Are you going to be okay?
Totally. I mean, how many times we've all failed at a million things? Well, how many of us are afraid of failure? If we failed, Scott, what's his name on Pivot? He talks about
Galloway. Yes.
Yeah, Scott Galloway. He talks about how he's terrified of doing events. He says that the one thing about events is that when you fail, it's public failure. And that is the scariest thing that can happen to anybody. He says, if you're an investor and you lose $1 million on a stupid bet, nobody knows you did that. But when you're an event organizer, so he was terrified of the Pivot conference that they were doing down in Miami, and he was all stressed out over it because it's public failure. We deal with it every single day of the week. And, nothing's going to go right. And we're going to all fail at different things, but we just learn from it and pick ourselves up and go to the next thing.
Well, with that, let's see, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to this for a second. It's the top of some hour somewhere for lots of people. David, can't thank you enough. You can, if you miss this, if you want your friends to see it, you'll be able to find the restream on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to see it chopped up into various things. I hope that, David, what I'm feeling like, really, why did I do this? You are, it's people like you and Andrew, Sherry, Dahlia, thank you so much. We'll be buddies. We'll be booth buddies soon. And go enjoy, everybody. And we will see you next month when we look at virtual experiences that will wow you. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.